I'm Scott Al Miller. This is my life living in Leon, Nicaragua. I'm out here with the dogs on a gorgeous afternoon. This entire week has been just fantastic. We often get a little bit hotter temperatures here during January, but this year it has been beautiful here in Nicaragua. I apologize if there's a little bit of wind. We seem to have just the tiniest bit of a storm rolling in. We've been overcast all day. I can't tell you how beautiful the weather has been, and having been in the United States for Christmas and New Year's and being so bitter cold and seeing the pictures of Louisiana and Houston buried in snow and being here in the most gorgeous weather where it's a little bit more chilly than usual. We're probably getting an effect of that storm, and getting to enjoy the perfect weather is such a great juxtaposition from having been so cold and painfully cold in the United States. We're very happy to be here, and it's a wonderful life. Today, viewer Kevin Beard sent in a question about education for our kids and more about the future plans for education rather than what we're doing right now. So we're going to get to his video question that he sent in for us right after that bump. Many of you know that my kids homeschool, and we've been expats living abroad outside the United States for 10 years now. So it's something that's very important as part of our life strategy to let our kids live with us and move around the world and give them maximum opportunities and spend more time with us as a family. But that does lead to a lot of questions for people, and Kevin sent in a video question today. And before we show that video, I just want to say how much I am thankful that people are starting to send in video questions. I absolutely love these. I mention it a lot, but I always say at the end of the video, so I'm going to start saying at the beginning more because I got 3 of these today. I love it. It's fantastic. All the information you need to be able to send me a video question or comment is right down there in the show notes. Just go in there, just send them in to me, and hopefully I don't have the link expire. Love getting video questions and having you guys like connect with the community in this way. It's fantastic. So let's get right on to Kevin's question.
Hey Scott, this is Kevin. I had a question for you. I've heard you mention your kids are homeschooled. I was wondering what the plan is when they get to college. Are they fluent enough to go to school down there? And would a degree from down there hold any weight in the United States? Yeah. Let me know. Thank you.
Well, first, thank you so much to Kevin Beard for sending that in. I just love being able to add you guys to the show, and I think it's a great question. So my kids have, I think, a relatively unique case, but it's not going to be completely unique, or, I mean, it is, but I think there's a lot of like base information here that could be pretty useful. So let's break this down. First, are my kids going to be getting a degree or a diploma from somewhere that's going to allow them to look at university? So yes. My kids, specifically in the way that they're homeschooling, because we are Texans and we're doing things through the state of Texas, they will have the equivalent of a high school diploma from the state of Texas, which allows them to basically go to any university in the United States if they wanted to, or any accredited. You really have a lot of flexibility, same as any American graduating from high school, public or private. So they'll be the same as my wife and I. Now, as far as their Spanish, yes, my youngest is probably going to have pretty fluent Spanish by the time that she graduates from high school. She already speaks some and is able to hear it quite well and is picking it up at a pretty good pace overall. My eldest is quite a bit older and closer to graduation and learning a lot less Spanish. My youngest studies Spanish every day. My eldest studies German. So her pace at which she's learning Spanish, even though she's exposed to it, is very slow. So one, yes, probably could attend classes in Spanish by the time she gets to university. The other, probably not. Now, of course, the question is, would they be allowed to attend university here in Nicaragua? Of course, we expect that they be allowed to, but would they have the paperwork and just the general acceptance to have that option? And the answer is yes, unless something completely changes. Their current situation, both for their high school education and for their residency, give them total access to the Nicaraguan pool of university and advanced education options, including vocational schools, as any citizen would have. So if they wanted to attend a school such as Yunnan, or go to the local vocational school here in Leon, or go to Hinotepe as an example, which has a pretty good sized university town, or to San Marcos, right? All of those would be completely open to them. They have those options. So pretty flexible from that perspective. They also have the option of going anywhere in the U.S., and most universities around the world accept the U.S. high school education as at least good enough for that portion of their entrance requirement. So if they were looking at anything like that, they'd be pretty flexible. Like if they wanted to go to school in England or around Europe or in most of Latin America, those options would exist for them. Then comes the question of what are the schools like here in Nicaragua? Are they accredited with bodies that are recognized by the United States or whatever? What flexibility do they have there? So schools here in Nicaragua come with a range of accreditations, and I'm not the expert on this, but I have looked into it a little bit and do have a little bit. So there is at least one university here in country that is accredited from the United States. Of course, to the best of my knowledge, American universities only accredit schools that pay money into the U.S. It's not really an educational standard. It's a monetary thing. It's just a for-profit organization making money, and they may call it a nonprofit. I have no idea, but it is a money-making institution, and certainly not one of education. If it was an educational standard, very few universities in the United States could ever be accredited, right? So, especially not the ones that they tend to accredit. So we know it's not a very good education standard. The U.S. University system has some truly horrendous, fully accredited schools. So that's an incredibly low bar that is meaningless from an education standpoint. But there is at least one here in Nicaragua that has paid into the U.S. To be a member of that system. There may be more, but I do know that one exists. Sorry for the shadows on my face, but I moved the camera to get the microphone away from pointing at the dogs who are barking nonstop. So I'll do my best to kind of get a little bit of light here. We do have kind of a nice even light because of the cloud cover, but I'm pointed in the worst possible direction. Of course, as soon as I do this, they stop. Now, other accreditations here in Nicaragua do exist. There are some universities that give you a local degree and then have a joint accreditation program with either Mexico or Spain, which are generally very highly respected accreditation zones. So there are some options with that as well, and that is a different school. I don't know how many do that, but I do know that the one that I know that has American accreditation and the one that I know that has Mexican and Spanish accreditation are separate. So you have multiple schools that have international accreditations that are options. And of course, you can do school remote to the United States or whatever and go to whatever standard university you would like. Now, the question also comes up is how useful is any of that accreditation? Well, that's really interesting and something that people need to be aware of what that actually means in most cases. In most professional situations, accreditation is absolutely meaningless. Now, there are situations like if you want to be a dentist or a doctor or a lawyer that you may have a requirement for accreditation from one part of your educational system in order to qualify to go on to the next because they have to be overseen by a government body that is trying to make money from the system, and so they have this pay-to-play system. That is relatively rare. When you're getting into real business, into anything in a capitalist free market system, they care about your education. In that case, they actually won't care that you went to university at all, but anyone who's playing the game where they're trying to make you have gone to university, they never check accreditation. No one ever says, did you go to university, and follow up and go look at the university and say, was that accredited by an accrediting body that I approve of? No, that really doesn't happen. If you have a situation where someone's like, well, I'm only hiring people who went to, Princeton or whatever, then they're going to be looking for that, and then you have to play that game no matter what. If you're simply looking to meet a legal requirement that you have a degree or don't have a degree, then it's not going to matter where it comes from as long as you have one. So if you're applying for a job and they say you must have for example, a bachelor's degree, and then you have a bachelor's degree from Nicaragua, it's going to count just fine. That it's not accredited by an accrediting body that particular jurisdiction would look at for something has nothing to do with looking for a job and has nothing to do with whether or not you've had that education. So by and large, unless you're going into very specific government-controlled categories, which are normally only government jobs in the United States, like doctors or lawyers, which in the U.S. are part of the government system, no matter how you slice it or dice it, right? You're paying the government government to give you a license to own a bit of access to the American people, and that job only exists in that capacity inside the United States. That is a government job by any definition, right? There's no way to come up with some way to describe that some other way. So if you're looking at those kinds of jobs, with my children, absolutely are not. That is never going to come up for them. One, because they have no plans on living in the United States, and two, they have no interest in jobs of those natures. So it's the farthest thing from where they are. That's not very likely to be something that matters. What might matter for them is they may want a career where having a degree could be beneficial, which is something that I don't believe exists today by and large, and is far less likely to exist in the future, as there's beginning to be a backlash against the mismarketing of universities. So I don't think that's a very big deal. But if it is a big deal for you, it's something you want for your children, it's something your children are interested in, then having a degree in most cases will take care of everything. It is extremely rare that someone is going to care about accreditation when hiring someone. And it'd be a really weird thing to do, and it would be very hard to justify to the investors in a company that we decided not to hire the best people for the job because we didn't like the accrediting body that their university was accredited by. That sounds completely crazy, and it is, right? So while there are places that will use their middle management power to steal money from the investors and use it to promote their personal views of what they think appropriate education should be, those really are few and far between. It's enough of a stretch that places look for degrees at all, but looking for specific accreditation and taking the time to look into that accreditation gets very, very unlikely at best. Now, in a purely more practical sense, are my kids interested in doing any of that at all? And currently the answer is no. Neither of my children have the slightest interest in even looking into university. They don't want to go into careers that will even have real offerings from university, let alone have benefits. Now, the more practical question is, will either of my children actually find the idea of going to university to be something that they are interested in doing? And right now, the answer is both from them, no, they have absolutely no interest whatsoever. And from a practical standpoint, it is unlikely. Now, there is a little bit of benefit to some aspects of Nicaraguan life because Nicaraguan universities are so much more affordable and accessible, and there is such a lack of employment in the market that there are some benefits given to people who spend time in university. I don't know how much that will really end up applying to my children, but it is a consideration at the very least. Sometimes having paid for those degrees or taking the time to get those degrees does get you some things in society, but having been second-generation immigrants to the country, having grown up here and done many things here and being investors here for a long time, it is very unlikely that those things will actually end up being factors for them, but they are considerations worth having. For us, having degrees here as first-generation immigrants does pay off to some degree, even though it didn't help us in our careers at all, and in fact held us back quite a bit. But one could argue that had we not been held back so much in our careers and had so much more spending power by not having gone to university, that would give us even more benefits in coming into Nicaragua than the degree does, and that would make a lot of sense. So it's very difficult to say that it's positive, even for those of us who have it and leverage it. If it had no cost in time or money to acquire, of course it would be beneficial to have rather than not have. But given that it never exists in that context, we always have to weigh it against the cost of lost opportunity. And I've yet to see a spot where I'm confident that it is beneficial, even in these minor little roles. But for my children, because they have no interest in any job that could benefit from going to university and have no plans on pursuing anything that would be impacted by that, and are very active in trying to pursue their careers and career options already at this young age, university seems like a nearly impossible thing for them to select in the future. And of course, remember that if you enter your career and start doing things in life, and later in life, whether you're 25 or 30 or 50, and decide you want to change gears and do something that's going to require university, it's far easier to attend university and get through it quickly and effectively and get more out of it later in life than it is when you're young. And any negative impacts of it are far less acute later in life. So it's generally best to hold off unless you have a very specific need for it, and that is very likely where my children will be. We do want them to, of course, have the options of attending university should that ever come up as something that they want to do something in life that would benefit from, but they will not be in any way giving up those options just because they decide not to go. So 20 years from now, they suddenly say, you know what, I decided I do want to go into this field and it requires a degree. now I'm going to go to university, but they'll be able to do that with much more knowledge and experience and generally get much more out of the experience. I ended up going to university, dropping out and going back. And when I went back, I had a lot more knowledge and just maturity to approach it in a different way. And I got so much more out of my university experience that time than when I was younger. And yes, maybe the university played a role in that, but my maturity and my ability to approach the university experience different was far more influential. When I started, it was do everything by the book and just they feed you what classes you're going to go to, how you're going to approach it, what you're going to do. When I was older, I came back and said, I'm the client here. I want to get more out of this. Your class, this doesn't have value, so I'm going to do something harder. This class doesn't apply. I want something that does apply, and so forth. And I was able to very purposefully design my degree in a much more meaningful way. I can't tell you how frustrating it is doing these videos with the dogs never stopping barking. It's very hard. I know that, like my father has said, that they're really not that loud on the video, but I'm actively speaking quite loud to be able to hear myself over the dogs, and I digitally filter them out as much as I can, but it actually makes it very hard to think from the amount of barking that no matter what I do, no matter where I go in the grounds, they're always barking in my ear. The act of coming outside makes them chase the squirrels and get all worked up, and so I can never, without locking them in a room, I can never come outside and talk without this going on. So for us, at least currently, we don't think that university is going to be a major factor for our kids, but we definitely want to make sure that they are capable of making those choices when they're coming to university age, and we hope that they maintain the flexibility to be able to choose that in the future, if that makes sense. And we are going to look for options, of course, that they may take some university classes while they're still in high school, as Americans have a tendency to do, and that may be beneficial as well. They also do a lot of independent study, which we're starting to add more and more. So with those things, I think that there's just a lot of flexibility, and they're in great shape, and they come from generations of family that have taken alternative approaches to things, and they're inheriting a business that we've grown over my entire professional life. So they have a very different situation than a lot of people. But for those of you who are looking at the potential options for your own children, I think that you can, with a little bit of effort and a little bit of research, and it depends on your particular jurisdiction where you're coming from in the United States, but you have a lot of options to do homeschool here and still maintain a very wide range of university options. And for those who are really concerned about accreditation, simply look at online schools. I would say most of the time, that's where your best options are probably going to be. But there are schools, at least one school here, that is fully accredited in Nicaragua. As far as doing school in Spanish, yep, that is an option if your kids that are students are interested in potentially going down that path. They want to, for example, attend UNAN here. Then I think most likely you're going to want them to go through at least some amount of public high school or private high school, that's fine, but local high school here in Nicaragua, so that they have that classroom experience in Spanish and some of that shared experience with students before going into university, so they're going to be a little bit more comfortable with that particular group of students when they get into the school system. I don't know anyone who's actually done that, so I'm hypothesizing here, but if it was my kids and they were really serious about attending in-person Spanish classes at UNAN, for example, I mentioned that one because it's right here in Leon, and a major university here, I think that they would be really trepidatious of doing so without having had a school experience. But if they were here where we live, if they went to Pureza, if they went to La Salle, if they went to Calisans, right, and had those private school experiences for even just 2 years, and knew that they could speak in Spanish, knew they could sit through a classroom, knew what other students had been doing, what their time had been like, then attending local university would be not very stressful and possibly even something they would really enjoy. Jumping straight into that, I think, would be a little bit scary. But we have found that homeschooling has been absolutely fantastic. It's been the right choice. There's very little doubt for us that that is what we should have done. And our kids are definitely like, nope, no interest in attending school here or back home in the United States. Not a thing that they want. They are very appreciative of their free time and their ability to explore their own interest and to have flexible schedules, have flexible learning paths and so forth, that it's been really great. And we get so much more time together as a family, and have over the years, that's been a really important factor in our lives. So thank you so much to Kevin for sending that in. I encourage all of you, send in video questions. They really are fantastic. It really makes my life easier, but it's also so much fun to actually connect with you guys and connect you guys to each other. And of course, we have the WhatsApp expat community for those who want to have people to chat with in real time, as well as Nika Habla. Go down there in the show notes, and the links for those things are there. Hop on in and join that community. You have to use WhatsApp if you're going to be here anyway, just for living. So get in that community, and there's already a Leon community, there's a Granada community, and we have a general for just all the expats to talk to each other. And it's quite lively already. It's only like a week old. So great place to get in and get direct information from all the rest of you and other people who aren't part of this community as well. And as always, if you want to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Scott Allen Miller. And if you want to join our community, we have a join button down there. And I appreciate all of you guys for all the things that you do and all the support you give and all the comments you leave. And of course, if you don't want to send in a video, you can ask a question below just by writing in as well. I try my best to read all of those. I get a lot of content for there, and I will see all of you tomorrow.